Hey, so I am just gonna start kind of with what I would normally do with him on a day that we would be meeting. So my kid's name is Tyler. He is so sweet. He is so nice. He is just such a joy to work with. And typically, what we do when he first comes in, his mom reads little stories to him at night, and what we do is we kind of talk about what those stories were, if he liked them, what did he like about them, and we just do this for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, just kind of warming up and saying hey. And he kind of is shy the first few minutes that he comes in, so I really like to just kind of talk with him about what he did last night, and if he had baseball practice, we connect on that. So we take just a few minutes, maybe like 3 max, to just kind of say good morning and things like that. And then I typically like to kind of remind him what we talked about last class, or last tutoring session. And the previous tutoring session we talked about, I remind him the last two what we had kind of been focusing on. And I would remind him, today we're going to read a text, and when you read that text, I want you to remember green is for start, which we did a little red light, green light game. Green means go, so that's the start of your sentence. Remember that capital letters are the start of our sentence. And periods are like a stop sign at the end of sentences, which were red. So I always, kind of remind him of that. And then we had been working on showing expression when reading. So I would probably talk to him a little bit about, make sure we're being expressive. And when we're excited, our voice goes up. And when we're sad, our voice goes down. And we're sad, or when we have a question, like what are you doing? Our voice, just all those things, and talking about reading with a lot of emotion and a lot of feeling. So we would talk a little bit about that, and then I always like to kind of establish the purpose for our lesson, and I always write these little notes so that I remember exactly the good stuff to say. So if you see me looking off to the side, that's what I'm looking at. I always write out, because you always forget something. So then I would just kind of establish the purpose of the lesson by saying, today we're going to be working on retelling a fictional text using a lot of details. And then what we move into is kind of highlighting some key words for today. So if we were talking about schema, we would highlight schema, or if we were talking about emotion and feeling, we would highlight emotion and feeling. But today what we're going to be highlighting is the word fictional text, and then the word retell. And I would probably talk to him a lot about, first I would ask him, because, a lot of things I think he knows, sometimes he doesn't, and then I'm like, oh, he doesn't know that, and he totally knows it. So I'd probably first ask him, what is a fictional text? And then allow him to kind of elaborate, if he knows what that is, then let him explain to me, and then I would kind of jump in and say, a fictional text is not real. And then we have a nonfiction text, just to kind of throw in that extra little bit of content. A nonfiction text is real. But today we're going to focus on a nonfiction text. On a fiction text, sorry, that is not real. And then I would kind of move into, can you tell me what you know about retelling? What does it mean? What do you think I mean when I ask you to retell? Tyler, what do I mean when I ask you to retell? So then we would kind of move into, I would probably decide. Sometimes you don't always know what vocabulary home classroom teachers use, so I would see if he was familiar with the word retell, and then kind of throw in summarize and see which one he connects more with, because I don't know what vocabulary they're using in there, and whichever one he seems to really click with, that's the one we'll jump with. And I would kind of elaborate that they obviously mean the same thing, but kids are weird with words that click with them, so I want to go with the one that clicks with him, that he will remember the most. So I would just say, retelling is picking out big chunks of a piece of something, of a piece of reading, to make the story make sense again, to really, really make the story come together. We're not telling every single little detail that happened in the story from start to finish, but we're telling those key details that, we would be focusing on. So after kind of going over those big, those words that we really need to focus on, I think that we would then move on to, kind of saying that today we will be reading the story The Ugly Duckling, and I would have him a copy of this and me have a copy of this. And I would say, have you ever read The Ugly Duckling? Do you know anything about The Ugly Duckling? And then based on whatever his response is, we would either talk about what he knows about it, or if not, say, well, today we're going to learn lots about it. And after that, I always tell him that I'm gonna read the story first, and then you're gonna read the story. And I always read the story first just because it's a good way for me to model everything that we've already talked about. Stopping and going when we're at the starts and the ends of periods, and then also it's a good way for me to model how you read with emotion and how you read with not monotone and just the correct. It's a great way to model, and kids love read alouds. He loves to be read to, and I love to read to him. So it's a really fun thing for both of us. So like I said, I always read first, and so I would first start off by reading this, and have him kind of follow along with me. And then I would give him the time to read it, and maybe give him, 3 or 4 minutes just whenever he's finished. And I always like to read to him first because I think he gets a little more of the story when I read, because sometimes he focuses so hard on everything that we've talked about, stopping and going and reading with emotion and all of these things, that he forgets to actually, comprehend what the story is about. So I always love for him to just get that double exposure, and it's not a cold read. He doesn't need to read it as a cold read. He can read it the second time, and he already knows a little bit what it's about, and those unfamiliar words he's heard me say, so he can now say them. And I think it's just a great idea when you read and then let them read it on their own. So then after that, I typically we kind of take a break. He is a kid who kind of looks off and wonders and doesn't always focus on everything that we're doing. So I would probably give him just a few minutes for us to kind of get up and walk around and walk in the hallway and talk about what the story was about. And then after that, we would come back, and I found this really awesome, education.com has these super cool little mentor texts and really fun activities to go along. So I would show him these little pictures, and I would probably already have them cut out just because cutting takes a long time sometimes. So I would probably already have these cut out, and then a little piece of construction paper for us to glue. He loves hands-on things, and he needs hands-on things in order for him to kind of stay focused. So this says, "Oh no, the story has been all jumbled up. It's up to you to cut out all the images and make the story make sense again." And I love these directions so much because it says to make the story make sense again. And I would kind of touch on, when a story's out of order, it doesn't make sense. So when we retell, we have to put the story back in order. We can't say what happened at the end and the big climax and then go back to the beginning and talk about the characters. No, it has to be in order. First, next, and finally. So we would definitely talk about these, and I love the fact that these are pictures because this gives us a super awesome way to not just jump into writing about the retell, but being able to walk through and show the pictures, because this obviously doesn't have any pictures, but being able to connect this with a retell is a really good first step. And of course I would kind of model the first one for him and just talk about, it was a beautiful spring morning on a small farm near the woods. It was a cool shady corner, and the duck built a warm nest, so on and so forth. And one of the eggs was much larger than the next, So here is obviously the first part of it when they're hatching, and I would kind of model for him how I got that, where I got that from, how I knew that was the first part, and then maybe one more if he didn't seem to get it, but he usually catches on really fast. So I'd probably, kind of do one together, and then the next part have him do it on his own, and then we kind of, let him do the rest and kind of correct him when he gets off track or when he's incorrect, and then just go from there. And then after that, I created a really cool little worksheet for us to do. And I created it because this is a good way for us to start writing and using our words. So we would talk about, this story is about a ugly duckling who, and then we would kind of go into, it was the duck who was this and the duck who was that. And then we'll really talk about that first, then, and finally. So first, the egg's cracked, he's a little different, then this, and we would use those photos. We would use those pictures to just really incorporate them and go through, what happened first. Well, let's first look at the picture and see what happened first. And then let's look at what happened next. How do we put them in order on our construction paper? And then finally this happened. And the pictures are a really good way for us to just have something to refer back to, because again, this doesn't have any pictures. I mean, it has a little drawing over here, but this is just step by step. This is, those pictures are the retelling of the story. So then I would just kind of wrap it up. What did you learn today? What did we do today? And then we would typically do a read aloud if we have any extra time, and then we just go from there. So that's what we would do on a typical day. Yeah, so that's all I have. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys are having a good quarantine and you guys are very healthy. So thank you guys. Bye.